What's going on, everybody? Simple back at it like I'm checking my height. Today we have a request to check out some Netherlands stuff that isn't music related. Shout out to Mandy for this one. This is called Why We Won't Raise Our Kids in Suburbia and Move to the Netherlands Instead. Let's get into it. Not just, what did that say? Not just bikes. Okay.
One thing I immediately noticed about Amsterdam, and even more so in some other cities in the Netherlands, is that there are a lot of children around. This is actually a bit of a problem for this channel because, for privacy reasons, I generally try not to show children's faces in my videos.
That's probably a good idea.
I film mostly during school hours, but sometimes I want to film at rush hour, and there are always kids cycling to and from school and activities.
I like all the bike lanes that they have.
For my playground,
Huge shout out to the Netherlands for having so much involved with non-motorized transportation. You know what I mean? Because here in America, like, we have some bike lanes and stuff like that. A lot of them in small towns like where I live, it's basically they have bumped out the side of the road with some white lines, and that's the cyclist lane. And sometimes, like, there's no set specific place that a cyclist is supposed to be at any given time. You can either ride with traffic or ride, inside of the bike lane. You're not supposed to ride on the sidewalks anymore, which is definitely the safest thing, but there's so many people that walk on them around here, so it's really hard. So I really love how most of the Netherlands is probably set up that way, right? Somebody let me know in the comments where you have these dedicated roads for, bicycles or personal transportation type things. I think that's really cool.
are always kids cycling to and from school and activities. For my playgrounds video, I filmed on a cold Tuesday morning in December and used the equipment myself, which didn't always go as expected.
Ugh. I feel so bad for you, bro. You look pretty tall.
And used the equipment myself, which didn't always go as expected. Every once in a while, I have a clip that I really want to use, but it has a clear view of a child's face, so I try to blur it. While every video editing software claims it can face track, this never works as well as they advertise.
That's facts.
Okay, this is good. Wait, what? No, don't start tracking the bus! I wanted to make this video since the start of Not Just Bikes, but I was always waiting for just the right footage. Ultimately, getting clear video of a child who is obviously on their own, from the back, with no other children's faces visible.
Cool. Look at that little carriage thing. The kid sits in the front, though. I mean, I guess it gives better support for the bicycle, because you see a lot of people around here riding, with them in the back. There's, this little hookup that you can do to the seat post, and it rides out the back, and it's like this little carriage that they can ride in. It's all covered and stuff. I kind of like the carriage in the front idea, though.
Video of a child who is obviously on their own, from the back, with no other children's faces visible while also not getting arrested is surprisingly difficult to do. And it's also really creepy, so I stopped trying.
Probably a good
As a
idea.
result, this video will have very few clips from the Netherlands. You're just going to have to believe me, there are a lot of children out on their own.
This video is going to have very few clips of the Netherlands. I'm actually extremely interested to see how the rest of this is going to play out then. Okay.
The Dutch are famous for having the happiest kids in the world, and a big part of that is the fact that they can literally have chocolate sprinkles for breakfast. But the other big factor is the level of independence that children have here. It's not quite as crazy as Japan, where 4-year-olds are allowed out on their own and they make reality TV shows about it. Seriously, look up My First Errand on YouTube. It's hilarious.
Oh.
But here in the Netherlands, it's perfectly normal to see children under the age of 10 walking or cycling on their own. I got used to seeing children everywhere, so after a year in the Netherlands, it was amazing to see the difference going back to Canada. I drove around several residential neighborhoods, and while I occasionally saw some kids in the park with their parents, I never saw any children out on their own. This is something that has changed significantly since I was a kid, and it's really sad. I've talked to some parents from suburban Canada about why they don't let their children out on their own, and they usually
Yeesh.
say it's because it's too dangerous.
This is fast forwarded, but
One person even said, and I quote, somebody could come along with a white van, scoop them up, and nobody would even notice. Now, that's insane because Canada is one of the safest countries in the world, and abductions by strangers are exceedingly unlikely.
not in
So,
America.
why do people think this? Well, there are various reasons for this cultural change, including an increase in fear mongering media. But this is an urban planning channel, so we're going to talk about the reasons linked to city design. In her famous book, The Death and Life of Great American Cities, author and activist Jane Jacobs refers to an effect she calls eyes on the street. In short, places with many people around feel safer to be in than places that are deserted. And it's not just a feeling. Walkable places are measurably safer and generally have lower policing costs too, through what is known as natural surveillance. But I'll talk about that in more detail in a future video.
I mean, people
American-style
just being more
car-dependent
aware, I
suburbs are
guess.
desolate for people outside of a car. It's depressing to walk there, and I know because I've done it a lot in the process of filming these videos. I'm almost always the only one out walking, and you definitely get the feeling that if something happened to you, hundreds of people would drive by without even noticing. So it shouldn't be
Uh,
too surprising.
that's not always true. I mean, I guess in some places people mind their own business more. Where I live, though, if I heard somebody scream or something go on or, something happen, I'd probably go and help out. In the wintertime, we have people get stuck all the time. And, if we just let them sit there in the cold, that'd be kind of a dick move. So I definitely stop every time somebody gets stuck and at least try to help them out. I carry a shovel and all that stuff. But we have pretty heavy winters up around here in New Hampshire, so.
That some parents are uncomfortable having their children walk in an environment like this. Now, there's
It
another
is,
safe
I will say, it is definitely out of place to see kids walking around by themselves in America. That is not something. You have to have a level of street smarts, at least here, because there is a lot of things where people do very bad things to other people, and it definitely goes unchecked. And, you know, it, like he was saying earlier, those are the types of things, about the van and stuff like those are the types of things that happen in America, unfortunately. Um, they'd happen even when I was going to school and stuff. I remember hearing every once in a while there was a warning about this color car driving around with this type of person in it, pulling over and talking to kids. So it's definitely something that we have to be more aware of. And not to mention things, unless you live in a city, things are very spread apart. And there's only so many places that you can actually go to get, I don't know, and I guess it goes down to variety. Because then again, even as I say that there's only so many places, once you hit a place with gas stations, there'll be like 3 or 4 of them in the same area. Or if you hit a place that has, let's say, a Burger King, there's a McDonald's, a Wendy's, a Taco Bell. Like, they're like little spots where everything's kind of set up. Nothing's really very spread out, at least around where I am.
safety reason that's a bit more rational.
But
Canadian and American cities are really dangerous for pedestrians. While overall
yes,
traffic
that is also
fatalities in
very
developed
true.
nations have generally
People will not stop. People don't pay attention around here. Like, that's another thing, too. I feel like driving laws in other countries overseas are a lot different than here. I don't know, there's more regulations and things. Specifically, I guess, Germany with the Autobahn. There's different levels of licensing that you can go through. There's different levels of there's just different levels of everything. There's no speed limit over there. Here it's like 75 and we just drive 100, but nobody actually knows what they're doing. Nobody's ever been trained for it. Nobody, they say they have, they say they can do it. They say, but then we have all these car accidents over here too. So let me know what the rate, what's the difference? Cause now I'm actually really interested to know what the difference of like highway accidents, I guess, over around there. And is the Autobahn just, I'm not very educated in geography. I can't really remember a lot of things. So you'll have to excuse my school knowledge. It's not very good anymore. But Someone let me know down in the comments. Are the licensing things for Germany the same through the UK? Like you have to be licensed like that, or how different is it out where you guys live? Like at 16 years old, I think we can go take a test, and as long as we pass the test and drive with an instructor in the vehicle for like 10 minutes, here's your license. So it's very, very easy here to get a license.
Fallen steadily since the 1970s. In the US and Canada, a big part of this was achieved by putting almost everyone inside of a car. But while people inside of cars may be safer, pedestrian deaths have increased significantly in the past few decades due to an increase in car traffic, larger cars and SUVs, distracted driving, and higher
Distracted
vehicle
driving
speeds.
is definitely the biggest. I can
Ultimately,
guarantee
these
it.
unsafe roads lead to a vicious circle. Parents are more likely to drive their children everywhere because it's not safe due to all the cars, but in doing so, they're adding one more car to the problem and making it even less safe. I'd like to point out that this is a unique problem caused only by cars. I mean, nobody ever kept their kids from walking to school just because too many people took the tram. And lastly, it's often impractical for children to go anywhere on their own in these places. American-style suburbs are car.
And not to mention, um, we have like vagrancy laws and stuff. If you don't have, like, I was always told growing up, right? I wasn't allowed to go out on my own because I didn't have any money. And then even if I had money, don't spend it because, like, you're not supposed to just go and hang out in front of places. So it's like there's specific I don't know. I guess it's the same over there too. You don't just go and hang out in front of a store, but there are more common areas where we are set up like the business here on the left, the car wash on the left here. That's a business. Like you don't hang out in front of it. There's no reason for you to be there unless you're washing your car. There's a bank on the right. There's no reason to be there unless you're going to the bank. There's no reason to be at the store unless you have money. So like it kind of shuts down a lot of things. People just kind of walking around. I don't know. I feel like people here, at least where I live, like I said, there are a lot of runners and things like that, but mostly people are just walking to go get groceries and walk home, or walking to go get something at the gas station and walking home. Like there's really not a lot of just walking type travel to get to places.
Dependent. That means it's almost impossible to get anywhere without a car. So even if you wanted your child to walk somewhere, they simply can't. It's either too far, or it's difficult and dangerous because of a lack of sidewalks.
Yeah, very true.
When I have discussions with people from my suburban
Oh,
hellscape of a
there's the bike.
hometown, they usually.
That was the little bike lane right there. Hold on, though.
When I have discussions.
Here it is. You can see the bicyclist coming up. That's the white line. That's basically it. How do I explain this? It's not like a pullover line because you're not technically allowed to pull over there. It's like the walking line. But now they've designated it for bicyclists. So if your car broke down, that's the line that you're able to walk in to get up through traffic. I mean, obviously there's a sidewalk specifically here, but sometimes there isn't, which is probably why they've dedicated this one to bicycle traffic.
With people from my
but even
suburban
when he gets up to like the
hellscape
crosswalk,
of a
right?
hometown.
The light turns green, but he stands at the crosswalk. Now, technically, on a bike moving with traffic, you are allowed to just ride across the street. There's no problem with that. But also, technically, what you're supposed to do is pull over to the crosswalk, get off of the bike, press the walk button, and walk your bike across the crosswalks. So there's like so many different varying laws depending on what you're doing and where you like. There's no like, if you are on a bike, this is the lane you have to be in. This is what you're allowed to do. Period. No, it's like these are all the different things. Like, are you riding with traffic? Are you not riding with traffic? Are you a pedestrian? Are you like? It's crazy here. It's crazy.
They usually agree that the city is quiet and soul-crushingly boring, but they will inevitably say, "But it's a good place to raise children." I completely disagree. American-style suburbs may be a good place to shelter toddlers, but as soon as a child is more than about 6 years old, being trapped in a McMansion on the edge of town seriously inhibits their growth and independence.
Yes.
They might be able to walk to a friend's house if they're lucky enough to live somewhere with a sidewalk,
If you live
but
in a
they're
gated
unlikely to
community,
be able
they
to walk
probably
to
walk around a
school
lot more.
or anywhere else.
I lived on a main road.
In the Netherlands, 60% of children walk or cycle to school, compared to 28% in Canada. Mostly kids who live in the few remaining walkable pre-war neighborhoods that would be illegal to build today due to modern zoning.
I actually got to start walking in middle school, right? And it's only because we lived like 2 streets in front of where the middle school was. Now there was a main road, but we had a cross guard at where we could cross. So I lived in a pretty quiet neighborhood behind where I lived on the main road. Main road, my house, neighborhood behind us, other main road, school. You know what I mean? So like I got to walk to middle school and stuff like that, but never in my life would I try to walk to like high school. You know what I mean? That was like way down there. Yeah, I don't know. Riding a bicycle, you could have, but there's a huge risk that someone was probably going to steal it. Like, it, I don't know. It's just, I guess it sucks. It's like that around here.
When I was a kid, that number was 58% in Canada.
And
Not
ain't
that far
nobody
off the
wanna
Netherlands
walk in
today.
in the wintertime. I'll tell
Look at
you
these
what.
Canadian kids walking to their rural school in the 1920s, through the snow, uphill both ways. Yeah, that never happens anymore. This is the bicycle parking lot of a typical middle school in Amsterdam. And this is the bicycle parking lot of an elementary school. It is obvious here that the majority of children arrive on their own bicycles. But it's not something that's just for the cities either. Bicycle Dutch has several videos showing dozens of children cycling long distances to school in suburbs, towns, and villages.
That's awesome.
And it's not just about going to school either. Kids also have after-school activities and sports, and so in the Netherlands, it's very common to see children walking or cycling while dressed in football gear. Not that kind of football. Or hockey gear. Not that kind of hockey. Because they travel to all these activities by themselves.
Not that kind of hockey.
In the US and Canada, you have...
Hold on a second, though. I know there's two different types of football. There's what we call soccer here in America, and then what football actually is, right? Easy in the comments section. But then there's two types of hockey? I didn't know that.
Have the stereotype of the suburban
Maybe I
soccer
missed-
mom.
Maybe I missed
The mother
a
who
joke.
spends all of her time shuttling her kids around from school to activities to playdates and back. Because until a kid is 16 years old and has their own driver's license, they need to be driven around everywhere by their parents.
Yeah.
And this is considered normal.
And parents
Is it
don't
any
wanna
surprise
do
that kids in the
anything.
US and Canada
Parents will get home from work, you'd be like, Mom, I want to go do this. Nope. But what about go here? Nope. But at least here in the Netherlands, you'd be like, all right, I'm going to the park. I'm riding my bike. I'm walking. See you later. Like, okay.
are overweight and don't get enough exercise? I can't blame them for wanting to stay inside playing Fortnite all day, except that Fortnite sucks and they should really be playing Animal Crossing.
Hey, let's go.
So these problems originate in car-dependent suburbs, but unfortunately, decades
I have no opinion on either game, just so everybody knows. There is a lot of kids that play Fortnite, though. I don't know. Is what it is, I guess. I wish I had time to play video games anymore.
of suburbanization have changed the overall culture, where now too many Canadians don't believe it's safe for any children to be out on their own. So even if you did decide to live somewhere walkable, you still can't give your children the independence they deserve.
Because they've never grown up
For
with the street
example,
smarts.
here in Amsterdam, we started allowing our children to go to the park without us when they were 9 and 6 years old. This is totally normal and accepted in the Netherlands. If we let our children do this in Canada, we would literally have someone call the police. Or worse.
Most likely, yes.
You might think I'm exaggerating, but there are stories about
He's
this
not.
happening all over the country.
He's not.
And the one that angered me the most was the story of Adrian Crook. Adrian is a father of 5 children and lives in downtown Vancouver, Canada. He has a long-running blog called 5 Kids, 1 Condo about minimalism and raising a family in an urban environment. Adrian has always been vocal about allowing his kids to have their independence, and has written about how walkable urban city design makes this easier and more practical. As part of this effort, Adrian and his kids would ride the bus to school every day. He did this with them for 2 years, but in 2017, he started letting them do it on their own. A short time later, he was anonymously reported to the Ministry of Children and Family Development. The whole story is available on his blog that I'll link to below, but in the end, the ministry decided that children under the age of 10 could not be unsupervised in or outside of the home for any amount of time.
Wow.
And if Adrian let any of his children out unsupervised again, even to go to the store across the street, his children would be taken away from him.
Wow.
Adrian fought the judgment in court and only just won his case this summer, 3 years after the initial ruling. And if you think that's insane, in Ontario, the province where I'm from, children legally cannot be on their own until they're 16 unless, quote, adequate supervision is provided.
Yep.
When I was a kid, adequate supervision was, say, having the phone number of a neighbor. But the problem is, what constitutes adequate supervision is becoming increasingly strict and arbitrarily applied.
Yep.
This article has examples from all over Canada where child welfare investigations were started because, for example, a 9-year-old walked to school on her own, or because a mother allowed her children to play in the yard of their own house while she watched them from inside. Now, you might say that these visits from police or social workers are just overreactions.
And what's sad is they're focusing a lot of money towards preventing parents from being good parents and focusing, not even preventing parents from being good parents. Let me rephrase that. They're not putting money where it belongs, which is finding these people that disappear. I guess I could say it that way. Because, like I said before, that's the biggest problem we have in America. Every time I see a kid walking down the street, right? Don't think for a moment that in the mid-ground of my mind, even while I'm outside working on my truck or doing like the yard work and stuff like that, that I'm not paying attention, right? Because there's always that chance that a car pulls over, says, hey, get in the car, and you don't know if that person knew that child. Like that's, like I said, that's the biggest problem we have in America. And instead of them allocating money towards stopping it, they're allocating money towards putting parents through hell. For what? Because they're letting their child be independent. See, that's I have the biggest shout out to Ashton Kutcher too. If you guys don't know what he does, definitely go check out Thorn. And I didn't understand, like I always seen Ashton Kutcher as a goofy character that he plays in a lot of different movies and stuff, but you don't really take the time to separate the celebrity from the person. And in this instance, if you guys don't know who Ashton Kutcher really is, please make sure you go look him up. Make sure you go and see what he does for children and people around the world. It's a very amazing thing. Shout out to him.
And it's better to be safe than sorry. After all, none of these parents were arrested, right? But these social workers have the power to literally take your children away from you.
Yep.
You're crazy if you don't think this inhibits parents from allowing children to have their independence.
Yep. It does.
Personally, I have no interest in finding out the hard way what the currently accepted definition of adequate supervision may be when it comes to keeping custody of my children. Unfortunately,
See, that's the gray line that people aren't willing to cross. They're not willing to lose their kids, like this man just said. Hold on, how did he put it?
I don't think this inhibits parents from allowing children to have their independence. Personally, I have no interest in finding out the hard way what the currently accepted definition of adequate supervision may be.
Exactly, because I ain't willing to lose my kids to find out. And that's the veil right there. That's the veil that people are kept under. Well, you know what's going to happen, so you don't want to test the boundaries of what's going to happen. But that's where good parenting broke down back in the day anyway, because there's a lot of children that are allowed to make their own choices now. So it's like they're allowed to make their own choices, but they're not allowed to go out. But you're not allowed to discipline? Because the old way, quote unquote, of disciplining is wrong. You know what I mean? There's so many fine lines and divisional lines specifically for this country that I know of just because I live here, that it makes it very hard to be a parent. It makes it very hard to be a good parent specifically.
When it comes to keeping custody of my children. Unfortunately, the solutions to these problems are not easy because they involve changing not just cultural issues, but also the fundamental design of North American cities. Traditional walkable cities have a multitude of benefits, but walkability is nearly impossible to retrofit on top of car-dependent suburbia. And the last few remaining walkable places in the US and Canada are in such high demand that they're almost completely unaffordable to most people. So a few years ago, my wife and I had to make a decision. What kind of life did we want for us, and more importantly, for our children? The solution seemed pretty clear. We moved to the country with the happiest kids in the world. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank my supporters on Patreon who pay me to film other people's children. It's not what it sounds like. If you'd like to support the channel and get access to bonus episodes, visit patreon.com/notjustbikes. And since the kids went to the park by themselves, I'm going to kick back with a beer and watch one of my favorite YouTubers. Okay, Google, play Not Just Bikes.
What the hell was that full of?
I'm going to kick back with a beer and watch one of my favorite YouTubers.
Why does that not look like bubbles? Even though it most likely is. It looks like that wet gel stuff that you fill like candles with or something. It's weird.
Okay, Google, play Not Just Bikes on YouTube on the TV.
Okay, playing Nacho's Bikes on YouTube on the TV.
There's a good Nacho's Bikes. And today we're going to be doing that's one kiss. So, oh! My foot! My foot! Tore a big chunk of skin out of my foot.
Okay. That was very interesting. Let me know what you guys thought about it in the comments below. If you guys enjoyed this video, please, top line of the description, make sure you go and show your support for the creator as well. Check out one of the other current videos floating around, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.